Hello, everybody, and welcome to my very first class. Um, this is something that I'm offering for my top tier patrons in terms of immediate access. My mid tier patrons get access to this about 30 days after it goes live. But today, if you're not a patron, you can find me at patreon.com/Natanya Books. But for tonight, we are going to start talking about fantasy and fashion, kind of in a 101 sort of sense here. So I will be walking through some slides and talking about some of the experiences that I've had as a writer, as well as a fashion historian, and figuring out talking through some of the common mistakes that I see, but also really kind of trying to root this in actual history, because that really is the important part here when it comes to what we're working on. So if you don't know a lot about me, my name is Natanya Barron. I am a writer of historical and dark fantasy, if you want to put a kind of slant on it. Pretty much everything that I've written since I started publishing about 10 years ago is connected to fashion in some way. Fashion has influenced it, as well as the sort of production of fabric. I think a lot about how fabric culture influences the work that people do and how we present ourselves. And because I'm a fantasist and I write primarily fantasy, I think a lot about sort of intersection between that and things like magic, because obviously that is something that can break the rules. But no matter what where we are, there still need to be rules, even if everything is magical, or at least for it to kind of hold its center. If there were sort of four tenets that I would like people to think more about when they consider what is being done in terms of their world and fashion, and really anything that human beings are putting on their bodies to clothe themselves, it would be to start with following the field workers, thinking about the very beginning of where the fabric starts. And that's a variety of different things. We'll talk through that in a little bit, but people making the fabric, people actually harvesting or shearing animals, or working in the fields, those are very different from the people that end up wearing them. And how that entire supply chain works will influence or support the world that you've built, whether it is historically based or not. Also think about the dyers, the people that have their hands the dirtiest probably of all of these people. The color has so much to do with prestige and fabric, and how various people present themselves. And color throughout history has meant a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And the ability for us to make things different colors has also changed significantly. And then think about following the weavers. These are the people that are actually taking these raw materials and turning them into things that are wearable, to bolts of cloth. Again, these are typically not going to be the people who are actually benefiting from the final outfit. For most of the time that we've been producing high fabric, that has been a very big dearth between them. And then just really follow the thread. I think there's so much to see and think about how fabric influences your story and the story that you want to tell. And by avoiding certain pitfalls and understanding even just the basics, it can make a very, very big difference. So a couple of things to keep in mind before we get down to some pictures and kind of walking through the history of this. Think about plausibility. So even in genre, plausibility is important. The reason that I got into fabric culture, the reason that fashion history appealed to me so much as I started writing, because certainly it's been something I've been interested in for a very long time, but I always want to make sure that what I'm proposing is plausible. And since currently the only world that we know of is our own, I try to use that as a way to ground myself in the world that I'm writing, and making sure that things are plausible, making sure things don't stick out, understanding how things evolve and the technology more than anything that is part of how fabric culture grows, because fabric culture technology is the heart of so much technology, including computing science, as I have learned. Think about how clothing is narrative. Consider how your characters wear clothes, whether they iron them or they press them or they prefer certain colors or certain kinds of fabrics. Think about how fabrics make sound when they move. There's so much you can add to a character by thinking about what they're wearing and how that detracts or improves the way that you're talking about them. Anything is possible, but root it in your world's reality. So when we're talking about science fiction and fantasy, obviously anything can possibly go. But readers do tend to pull away when the logic of your own world doesn't necessarily make sense. So consider how all the pieces fit together and not just be able to wave, wave your arm. And then again, follow logic. Consider how technology